So, today we're diving into a pretty stark warning, the idea that our freedom is under threat in new and kind of subtle ways. The argument we're going to unpack is that power is quietly being gathered up in ways we've just never seen before, and that's something we really need to pay attention to. Okay, let's just get straight to the heart of the claim with this quote. It really captures the core concern here. The idea that in just the last few years, governments around the world figured out they could use immense power and face surprisingly little pushback from citizens. And according to the speaker we're looking at, this isn't just some abstract theory. You could almost think of it as a global training exercise. The argument is that the pandemic gave governments all over the world this taste of unprecedented control over our daily lives. And, well, they might have developed a real appetite for it. All right, so first up, how exactly did governments use the pandemic to expand their control? And maybe more importantly, are those so-called emergency powers actually temporary? The powers governments learn to use are incredibly specific. We're talking about the ability to shut down entire industries, tell people to stay in their homes, and stop travel between regions, all with just a decree. The speaker's concern is really simple. Once politicians get their hands on these tools, are they ever going to willingly put them back in the box? Now, the argument here isn't about, blind disobedience. Not at all. It's really about highlighting the difference between being a passive citizen and an active one. I mean, sure, obedience can be a good thing, but it's absolutely vital to question orders that just don't make sense. There's a great example from Japan where film directors protested these totally illogical orders to close movie theaters, places with no reported outbreaks, and guess what? They actually got the decision reversed. That's what active citizenship looks like in the real world. But government overreach is really only one piece of this puzzle. The threat gets a whole lot bigger when you combine it with technology. And that leads to something the speaker calls AI totalitarianism. I know, it sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, but the concept is very, very real. We're talking about a system where the state uses tech, things like AI, facial recognition, and mass surveillance to monitor and control everyone with just chilling efficiency. Just so you can wrap your head around the scale we're talking about here, check out this statistic from the source. In China, there is one surveillance camera for every 2 citizens. One for every 2 people. That's a staggering level of observation nationwide. So how does this actually work in practice? Well, the speaker lays out a pretty simple and automated process. Imagine this. A drone spots someone not wearing a mask. Then, facial recognition software instantly identifies them. And just like that, the authorities could be on their way. It's frictionless, automated enforcement on a massive, massive scale. Okay, so up to this point, we've been focused on government power. But the speaker argues there's another player in this game, maybe even a more insidious one that we need to be watching. So is the state really the only power we should be worried about? Well, the argument here is that a totally new kind of power has emerged, one that's unelected and for the most part unaccountable. We're talking about the giant tech platforms, what some people call GAFA, Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon. And here's the crucial difference, right? Governments, yeah, they write the laws, but at the end of the day, they have to face elections. There's public accountability. But big tech, they control the digital public square itself, the very platforms where we all debate and get our information. And their power is in the hands of executives, often making decisions completely behind closed doors. And for the speaker, there is no better example of this power in action than this. A sitting president of the United States was, for all intents and purposes, silenced on the world's biggest communication platforms by a private company. First, it was Twitter, and then came a 2-year ban from Facebook. And this leads to a really critical question from the source material. Who actually made that call? Was it the CEO, a committee, some single manager in a cubicle? The fact that we don't really know, that the source of this huge power is so murky, that is a central part of the problem. Okay, so we've laid out the threats, right? Government overreach, AI-powered control, and this new corporate power. So when you're faced with all that, what's the solution? What does the speaker propose we do? Well, their philosophy is really rooted in this core idea of a free market of ideas. The belief is pretty simple. You don't fight bad ideas with censorship. You fight them with better ideas, out in an open forum, and you trust people to make the right choice. So here's how the concept works. In an open environment, good ideas, the ones that have real value and truth to them, they'll naturally get picked up and they'll survive. Bad ideas? Sure, they might enter the market, but eventually they fail the test of public debate and just fade away. It's almost like natural selection, but for information. Now, of course, this ideal model faces some real challenges in our world of algorithms and platform control, but that core principle of open debate is still held up as the antidote. And this brings us to the final and maybe the most provocative part of the whole argument. If the main channels of information can be controlled, then where on earth are we supposed to look for what's true? The speaker makes this really fascinating observation about what different types of media even consider news. You've got your mainstream sources, right? They focus on politics, economics, the official story. But then you have what the source calls fringe media, which often covers topics the mainstream just dismisses as, entertainment or pure sensationalism.
But check this out. This is where it gets really interesting. For decades, UFOs were the classic fringe topic, right? Then, all of a sudden, the Pentagon itself releases a report admitting to over 140 unexplained aerial phenomena. Just like that, a topic from the fringe bursts into the official conversation. And it suggests that, hey, maybe important truths can sometimes start out in these really unconventional places.
And this quote really just sums it all up perfectly. The message is to keep an open mind, because the established powers, the official systems, they don't have all the answers. What gets laughed out as fantasy today might just be acknowledged as fact tomorrow. So what are we left with? It's this landscape of converging powers, where the lines between state control and corporate control are getting blurrier every day. And when these forces have the power to control what you see and what you can say, the final and maybe most important question is this. In a world where your reality can be curated for you, how do you find what's actually real? And that's the challenge we're left to think about.